Thank you very much.
I'm happy to be back at CPAC for the 5th time. My first time was in 2010 when I was 50 points down in the polls, and the only people that thought I could win my Senate race all lived in my home. 4 of them were under the age of 8 at the time. But I'm glad to be back with you on the eve of the most important election in my lifetime. November of 2016 is not going to be a choice about who the next president is alone. The question before us in November of 2016 is, what kind of country are we going to be? Now, for over 2 centuries, we've been an exceptional nation. A place founded on the belief that every man, woman, and child is born with a God-given right to life and liberty and to pursue happiness. Sometimes you wouldn't know we're an exceptional nation by listening to the left. They describe us as a people divided on lines of gender and ethnicity and race and class. Sometimes you wouldn't know we're an exceptional nation by listening to the president, who's described our nation as sometimes being arrogant or dictating terms to others. But Americans know we're exceptional. And you know who else knows we're exceptional? The world does. After all, when was the last time you heard about a boatload of American refugees arriving on the shores of another country? But our greatness was not an accident. It didn't happen on its own. Our greatness is the result of God's blessings, the sacrifices made by men and women in uniform, and the choices made by the people who were here before us. God is still blessing America, and we are still blessed with brave young Americans willing to sacrifice their safety for the sake of ours. But what remains to be seen is whether we are willing to do what those before us did, whatever it takes to keep America exceptional. Like those who came before us, we do face challenges. At home, we have millions of hardworking families living paycheck to paycheck, and they're wondering when are things ever going to get better for them. And around the world, because of the Obama-Clinton foreign policy, our allies no longer trust us, and our enemies no longer fear us. This is the road this president has placed us on. A government that increasingly controls every aspect of our life, from our health care choices to now even the internet. And a foreign policy that treats the Ayatollah in Iran with more respect than the Prime Minister of Israel. Here's the bad news. The bad news is that today our nation is on the road to decline. But here's the good news. We are one election away from triggering another American century. Imagine if we cut our taxes and simplified our taxes in our regulatory code. Imagine if we balanced our budget. Imagine if we repealed and replaced ObamaCare. If we did these things, our economy would create millions of better paying jobs, and the American dream would reach more people than it's ever reached before. Imagine if we had leaders that understood that the family, not government, is the most important organization in society. Imagine if we had policies that help people acquire skills not just through 4 years of college, but as plumbers and electricians and welders and airplane mechanics. Those are good jobs too. And imagine if our laws protected innocent human life from conception to natural death. If we had these things, not only would our people be stronger than ever before, but they would be equipped with the skills and the values they will need to succeed in this new century. And imagine if we had a commander-in-chief that understood that the way to defeat ISIS is not to find him a job. Imagine if we had a president who doesn't travel the world bad-mouthing America. After all, that's the UN's job. And imagine if we didn't have a Secretary of State who believes that the world is safer today than it's ever been, while at the same time radical Islamic jihadists are taking young women as brides, are burning prisoners in cages, and are beheading Christians on a beach in Libya. If we had these things, America would once again be the most trusted and respected nation on earth, and we would be safer. This new century presents us with significant challenges. but solving them are well within our reach. And if we do, our future will be even better than our history, and the 21st century will also be an American century. After all, leaving our children and our country better off than the way we found it, that's what Americans have always done. And that is what we are called to do now. Let me close with this. For me, this is deeply personal, as it is for many of you. See, America doesn't owe me anything. But I have a debt to America that I will never be able to repay. In May of 1956, my parents arrived here in search of a better life. They had little money, no connections, quite frankly, barely spoke the language and had a very limited education. Less than 4 decades later, all 4 of their children lived the lives and the dreams that my parents once had for themselves. For me, America isn't just a country. It's the place that literally changed the history of my family. It's a nation of equal opportunity. It's the most powerful force for good that the world has ever known. This is the America that welcomed my parents. This is the America that changed the world, and this is the America that you and I are now called to leave behind. And so, inspired by the memory of who we truly have been and are, let us now move forward to seize our destiny as who we are still destined to be, the single greatest nation that man has ever known. Thank you for having me. God bless you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Great speech. Yeah. Let's give it up for Senator Marco Rubio.
Thank you.
Good morning, CPAC. How y'all doing? I can't hear you. By the way, if some of you aren't feeling well this morning, you were up late drinking, it's not your fault. It's not Jack Daniels' fault. It's George W. Bush's fault.
There's nothing wrong with drinking, Sean.
By the way, I got my water too. Drink up. Senator, it's an honor to be with you.
Thank you.
Right? Great conservative Tea Party
Thank you.
senator from the great state of Florida. I love your family story.
Thank you.
That is the American story. Here's where we are now. And this breaks my heart, and I think it breaks the heart of everybody in this room. Nearly 50 million Americans in poverty, nearly 50 million Americans on food stamps.
Yeah.
We have 92 million Americans not working out of the labor force, but the government tells us the unemployment level's great. We have 18.1 trillion in debt, 100 trillion in unfunded liabilities. How do we dig ourselves out of that hole?
Well, first we have to understand that the world has rapidly changed. We're basically having the Industrial Revolution every 5 years. That's how fast the world has changed, and our leaders are still stuck in yesterday. They think that if we just pour more money, more of your money, into the same programs that didn't even work that well in the past, we're going to get us out of this. There are 3 things we have to realize. Globalization is real. We are now in competition with dozens of other countries. And unless we cut our taxes, reduce our regulations, get rid of Obamacare, balance our budget, and fully utilize our energy portfolio, we can't compete. We do those things, we can compete with anyone in the world. The second thing is we need to help our people be stronger than ever. That begins with strong families, by empowering parents, by allowing parents to choose the school their kids go to, not have the government tell them where they're going to go to school. By the way, that also means not having a national school board that imposes a national curriculum on the whole country.
So I'll put you down as yes for Common Core.
Yeah. But beyond that, we need to understand that in the 21st century, some of the best jobs require more than high school, traditional high school, but less than 4 years of college. And that means we shouldn't be stigmatizing those vocational careers. We should be graduating more people from high school ready to work as plumbers, electricians, welders, machinists, BMW technicians, you name it. And by the way, the 4-year degree is still important. Okay, I went to 4-year degree. By the way, I owed over $100,000 in student loans, which I paid off with the proceeds of my book, now available on paperback, if you're interested. But we have too many people in America today graduating with a 4-year degree that doesn't lead to jobs, and they owe tens of thousands of dollars. We should tell students, if you graduate with a major in Greek philosophy, you're going to struggle to find a job because the market for Greek philosophers is tight.
Senator, let me ask you this. I think everybody in this room applauds everything you said. I think that's the vision of what conservatism is about. There's been a lot of disappointment with the Republican Party. Yeah. In other words, a lot of Republicans run, they say they want to, repeal and replace Obamacare. But then when it comes to that moment where they can use their constitutional authority and the power of the purse, it doesn't happen. We've now kicked the can down the road as it relates to the DHS funding bill. Every Republican that I remember in this last election said that they would do everything in their power, that they would not allow Obama's executive orders on immigration to go through. But it appears some people are buckling a little bit.
So here's the problem that we face in the party. There is a dispute between those who simply think our job is to do a better job of managing the government and those who understand that we are at a crossroads moment in our history, which every generation faces. It's the point of my speech. We're not alone in this. Every generation of American has been asked the same question. Do you want America to be special, or do you want it to be just another country? The point has come again. And so a lot of these issues, I understand they don't play well in the media, but you know what? When Reagan took on the Soviet Union in the Cold War and he said that they were destined for the ash heap of history, that wasn't popular in the media. People thought they called him crazy for calling the Soviet Union an evil empire. There comes important, critical moments in our history where you have to stand up and say, if we keep doing what we're doing now, it isn't going to matter anyways. We're going to lose what makes us different. And that moment has come on a number of these issues, and we have to view it that way.
Why is there this mysterious reluctance and resistance and fear that the Republicans are going to be blamed for a shutdown? If, for example, they didn't fund Obamacare.
That's the hypocrisy in this, right? So when we're in the minority and we filibuster Obamacare, we want to repeal it or at least get a vote on it, we're shutting down the government. When they're in the minority and they're filibustering, getting rid of this executive order, we're shutting down the government too. I mean, any way you look at it, that's how they're going to portray it.
Does there come a point where we keep hearing that there are differences in strategies, tactics? Is there a point where you stand on principle and put all political considerations aside?
This latest issue that we face on the executive order that the president took in December, it is not a policy issue per se alone. It is a constitutional issue. This is a president that, let me tell you something. I believe we need to cut the corporate tax rate. I believe we need to cut personal tax rates in America. But if a president took executive order to cut the tax rate by refusing to collect more than a certain percentage, I would be against that, even though I support the policy. Because you don't have the power to do that. If you lose that constitutional check and balance on power, you lose the essence of what makes our nation different from a government standpoint. So, "22 times the president said he did not have the authority to do what he did. As far as I can tell, in the last 4 years, the Constitution has not been amended. So I don't know where he suddenly found the constitutional power to do this. This is not a policy debate. This is a constitutional debate.
Yeah, he made it up as usual. I think it's very key, though, because it's fidelity to the Constitution. That is our foundation. That is our rule of law. Let me ask you about immigration. You went forward with your immigration proposal. And at the end of the day, you said, it didn't work, I tried, it's not going to work.
Right.
And you kind of, last time I interviewed you on radio about it, you said you regretted going forward, you learned from the process, you thought you made a mistake. Explain.
Well, it wasn't very popular. I don't know if you know that from some of the folks here, but here's the thing. It's a serious problem that has to be confronted. It does. And let me tell you why it's serious. For one, we don't have the mechanisms in place to enforce some of our immigration laws. We don't have an E-Verify system. We don't track people. 40% of illegal immigrants come legally and overstay their visas. We don't know who they are. We have to put that in place. There are at least 3 sectors of the border, one in particular, that are just completely insecure. It needs more fencing, it needs more patrols, it needs more, that stuff has to get done. We also have a legal immigration system that's the most generous in the world. 1 million people a year come to this country legally. No other country even comes close to that. But it's all based on whether or not you have a family member here. And it can't continue to be based on family alone. It's got to be based on some sort of merit and economic contribution. That has to be dealt with as well. You have 10 or 12 million people in this country, many of whom have lived here for longer than a decade, have not otherwise violated our laws other than the immigration laws. I get all that. But you can't even begin to have what I've learned is you can't even have a conversation about that until people believe and know, not just believe, but it's proven to them that future illegal immigration will be controlled. That is, and brought under control. That is the single biggest lesson of the last 2 years.
You know, I think everybody in this room would agree with this. Whenever there's a budget deal made, and they talk about, all right, we're going to have tax increases and we're going to have spending cuts. You always get the tax increase on day one, and then the spending cuts 10 years later never happen.
Yes.
Isn't it the same thing with immigration?
That was the strongest argument made against the bill, and I'll tell you what, it was proven to be true because the president, not once but now twice, has basically said by executive order, I won't enforce the law.
Okay, so my question is, in other words, I think the fear of many people, everybody agrees that I think we have to deal with people that entered this country illegally or overstayed their visas. But isn't the real answer, it's sort of like getting the spending cuts up front, secure the border first?
That's my point. My point is that the only way forward, I keep telling this to people, the only way forward is you can't just tell people we're going to secure the border, we're going to put E-Verify. You have to do it. They have to see it. They have to see it working. And then they're going to have a reasonable conversation with you about the other parts. But they don't even want to talk about that until that's done first. And what's happened over the last 2 years, the migratory crisis this summer, the 2 executive orders, that's now more true than it's ever been.
Let me ask you, you are a first-term senator from the great state of Florida.
Yep.
We have a man in the White House right now who is a one-term senator, voted present as a state senator, had some very bizarre friendships, in case you didn't hear me ever talk about it. I talked about it a lot. But why do you want to be president of the United States?
Well, I haven't made that decision yet, Sean, but a good try to get me to announce it on you. Look,
on a scale of 1 to 100, where are you in the process of committing to it?
I don't know about the number. But look, for me, it's very simple. What I said there is absolutely true. The only reason why I want to be in public service is because I believe I owe a debt to America I will never be able to repay. America doesn't owe me anything.
We all benefit from it.
And I believe that's not a lot of people. Some people don't think that way. But I certainly feel that way, and I think everybody in this room feels that way. Mm-hmm. And to me, for someone who has literally seen my family's entire destiny altered by the fact that America happened to be 90 miles from Cuba instead of some other country, I have to pay that back. And not only do I have to pay that back in some way, I have to make sure that people who are trying to do the same thing now get the chance to do it. I don't want my kids to one day grow up and ask me, how come you got to grow up in the greatest country in the world, but we get to live in a country that's diminished? So I have to decide through careful prayer, where is the best place for me to serve this country at this stage in my life?
You might be willing, you said you wouldn't run simultaneously for president and the U.S. Senate, but you don't really have to make that decision until March, April, or May, I think.
But, you know, I think if you want to be president of the United States, and you decide that that's where you've been called at this time in your life to at least run for it, and you believe that's the best place for you to serve America, that's what you run for. I don't think you can start thinking about what's my exit strategy, what's my plan B. The truth is, Sean, I don't want to be in politics my whole life. I want to serve our country, and I'd like to do some other things, like maybe own an NFL team or something. I don't know. I mean, I'd have to sell a lot of books for that, I think.
That's going to work. All right. One of the most pressing problems that the world faces right now, we have seen mass beheadings. We have seen people burned alive. We have a president that says the Islamic State is not Islamic. He won't mention the words radical terrorism.
They're not Presbyterian.
No, they're not. We see the rise of anti-Semitism. We see hostility, you mentioned in your speech, towards the Prime Minister of Israel. Yeah. How, if you did become president, how would you deal with this crisis of worldwide terrorism, a group that wants to raise the flag of Islam in the White House and meet all of us in New York? How do we deal with them?
2 separate points I'd make on that. The first is understand why the president has not put in place a military strategy to defeat ISIS. If we wanted to defeat them militarily, we could do it. Here's why he hasn't done it, because he doesn't want to upset Iran. In his mind, this deal with Iran is going to be the ObamaCare of his second term, and he doesn't want to do anything that upsets Iran, and they don't like it when we send military force into the region because they think the region should belong to them. As far as what we would do, it's quite straightforward. The ISIS is a radical Sunni Islamic group. They need to be defeated on the ground by a Sunni military force with air support from the United States. The Egyptians, the Saudis, the Jordanians, the Qataris, the UAE, the Bahrainis, even Turks and even Kurds, put together a coalition of armed forces from regional governments to confront them on the ground with U.S. Special Operations support, and then provide them logistical support, intelligence support, and the most devastating air support possible, and you will wipe ISIS out.
Let me ask you, we're running out of time. If you were elected president, quickly, what would be the top 5 agenda items that you would push hardest for in your first 100 days?
The 3 things we need to do. The first is we need to have a healthy economy. Tax reform, regulatory reform, repeal and replace Obamacare, fully utilize our energy portfolio, and balance our budget. The second is we have to give people the skills they need for the 21st century, totally revolutionize the way we pay for higher education in this country. Not everyone should be forced to get a 4-year degree in order to find a job. There are millions of good-paying jobs out there, and we should allow people to access the skills they need in a cost-effective way. And third, we need the strongest, most powerful military force in the world, and an American foreign policy. That tells the world very clearly it is bad to be our enemy and good to be our friend.
All right. We're running out of time. This is what we call our lightning round.
Okay, lightning round.
Abortion.
I'm pro-life. I mean, it's just as simple as that.
Gay marriage.
I believe marriage is between one man and one woman. That's what it's been for thousands of years, and it served our people well.
Colorado marijuana legalization.
I'm against the legalization of marijuana.
Should every law-abiding American, even in states that have restrictive gun laws like New York, should they have the right to carry a weapon?
Absolutely. The only people who don't care about gun laws are criminals.
I'm going to throw out a couple of names to you. Hillary Clinton.
Yesterday.
Bill Clinton.
What's the next one? Really yesterday.
Barack Obama.
Failed.
Last question. You talked about your love for America and how we all really, we receive so much more than we could ever pay back. Explain if you believe in American exceptionalism and why.
I don't know if people realize, but in every other society in human history, your future is decided by what your parents did before you. If your parents were rich, if your parents were famous, if they were politically connected, if they could pick up the phone and find you your first job, you were set. And if they couldn't, you were stuck, no matter how hard you worked, how much you tried. The fact that the son of a bartender and a maid that worked at a hotel is sitting on the stage with you today, that's why America's special.
Senator Marco Rubio, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.